Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for checking out MTGRocks.com. My name is Alan, and today, boy oh boy, we had the Arena Economy stream, the long-awaited discussion that Wizards of the Coast had promised us for it feels like a couple of months at this point, at least probably 6 months at this point. And it's here. They did it. They talked. And it's yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this one. So, kind of just to set the stage, Wizards of the Coast did say to not expect a whole lot of earth-shattering news. There's going to be a discussion about the economy, how it was designed, and then some things going forward that they're looking to implement and to help kind of ease the pain points that the player base is feeling, or at least that they perceive that the player base is feeling within the economy. And so they got to do that and talk about that today. So, like I said, there's quite a bit to talk about here. And if you're reading the article, I'm going to, in the article, there will basically be kind of all of the main points that they discussed specifically that they kind of had pre-prepared. But then in the video here, I'm going to go through the Q&A because there was a lot of Q&A that was done from the Twitch chat. And there was a lot of great questions there. And I got, I think, as much of the relevant ones as possible. There was just too many to actually put in an article. If you have further questions or there's still some things that are confusing, I highly urge you to go back, watch the weekly MTG from today, and they'll kind of explain everything. You'll kind of get to hear a little bit more detail around exactly, their thoughts on this stuff, right? So let's get into it here. First off, Blake Rasmussen was joined by Chris Kuritz, who is the executive producer for Magic Arena. And Blake kind of prefaced this discussion as this is kind of the start of a conversation, right? This is the first of very many talks that they're going to have with us about the Magic Arena economy. This is going to be a back and forth. More than likely, they're going to be probably a bit more receptive to taking feedback from the community about things. And as we'll kind of get into, there's a lot that is kind of up in the air, not really set in stone, open to change, sorts of things. So it is going to kind of be on us to really let Wizards of the Coast know kind of how we're feeling about the things that they're talking about, right? So to kick things off, Chris had said that when they first designed Arena, when they built Arena from the ground up, it was meant to be fast, fun, Magic, kind of anywhere, and they had to strike a balance between new and enfranchised players both, right? To make sure that the play experience as well as the economy was, useful and viable for all kinds of players, especially kind of with the goal of like going to mobile and things of that sort, right? So the economy, that the way that they see it is the ways that players interact with the game through individual card rewards or ICRs, gold, time. They actually value time as a resource or as part of that economy, gems, etc. Right, and their goal was kind of to try to create paths to openness of play for all players as best as they possibly could through kind of these means. Now, the original goal of Arena was to be kind of about current release, standard play, and that's kind of really what it was. And originally they wanted it to be kind of the slow build up over time where you would be playing games and you would be able to, over time, iterate your decks until you got to a point where you were happy with the final builds of those decks and things of that sort. You kind of played at your own pace, if you will, right? And at that time, dusting was not really an option that they had considered on the table at all as far as kind of an economy perspective goes. And the reason for this, and I never really thought about it this way, I think this might be the first that a lot of people have kind of heard this angle taken on this form of economy, is that dusting, when you dust cards, you destroy cards in your collection to gain a resource to create cards. Well, rather than opening a bunch of cards and then destroying cards to create new cards, they just give you the thing to create the cards up front when you open the packs, right? And obviously that being the wild cards, and this has been iterated on through the wheel. When you open 6 packs, you get a rare wild card. Every 6 times that wheel fills up, you get a mythic wild card. That actually, there was a point in time where that wasn't the thing. That's I think that was something that happened like either when they launched full-fledged, or when they were going, very shortly afterwards. But they had that didn't used to be there. Wildcards used to be completely random. And so they did give some deterministic knowledge about when you were getting wildcards. Vault, same thing. You would get vault progress, and you'd get some wildcards that way. But rather than destroying collections, and destroying cards, they just gave it to you up front to be able to craft the cards you wanted right up front. Okay, so that's kind of their philosophy as to why dusting is, it wasn't on the table at the beginning, and it's not on the table now. So just right out of the gate, dusting not going to happen. Okay. So next, they kind of went in and talked about some of the pain points and issues that they had they'd known about, things that they've been gathered feedback from the community on, and they went through they hit on a couple of them. I don't think that these were really kind of, at least in my opinion, the big ones that I think I've seen a lot of the community hit on, but these could be pretty sizable ones. So the ones that they hit on were building and collecting entire sets of cards, right? So building, getting at least 4 of every set, or of every card in a given Magic set, and when they were building it, Arena, building a collection was something that was important, right? Which is why they don't want you to be able to dismantle or destroy cards. They want you to have collections. They want you to have a bunch of cards, because more cards equals more opportunity to play different kinds of decks, right? So that was their philosophy when building out the economy. But they recognize that collecting a whole set of cards, and every card in a set is a little bit of a problem. This economy isn't necessarily favorable for that. Additionally, they also recognize that there are hurdles for people who like to play a lot of different decks, who like to dabble in things, who like to maybe be flexible in the metagame, but they just don't have the collection to do so, or the means to acquire the cards to get that big collection. And then the other thing that they recognized was that limited really was kind of the best way to start building a collection. You draft a whole bunch. You can basically, if you're good enough at drafting, you can basically go infinite in draft, and you just start to accrue cards that way, right? And then eventually, as you make your way to constructed play, you will just have a very large collection from just all of those drafts that you did. Now, that's not, they recognize that wasn't necessarily viable for people who don't like limited, right? Or for people who are just not very good at limited. And so they wanted to address that as well as a main concern. And they gave some solutions, right? So here they have a couple of different sections of solutions. So they have a short and a long-term, or mid to long-term set of solutions that they have kind of drummed up, at least for now. Like these are the ones they were willing to share with us. So in the short term, for the set completion issue, they are going to be introducing Mythic guaranteed packs. Now, the way that they kind of set this up was that you're a player, you have a bunch of packs, you've got you're starting to collect cards in the set, and you've gotten most of the rares, and now you're really just kind of trying to get to the mythics, right? The duplicate protection isn't quite strong enough to necessarily like guarantee you that you're getting the mythics that you need to finish out the sets. You're more a lot of times getting the gem replacements for rares instead of actually getting new cards. And so they decided, okay, we're going to do a mythic guaranteed pack, and that's going to basically mean that the rare card, or the rare slot in that pack, is going to contain either a rare or mythic wild card, or it's going to contain a mythic from the set. And now these packs are going to be a little bit more expensive, 1,300 gold. There's also going to be bundles for these that you can purchase with gems as well too. But maybe buy a smaller set of the bundles, and then it's enough to get you kind of the rest of the mythics that you need for completing the set. At least from my perspective, as as somebody who's like a competitive player, content creator, if there are mythics that I need for content, or if there's mythics that I want to play in a deck, I'm just going to craft them, right? I'm not buying a ton of packs to necessarily try to finish out the random niche mythics that I really need for my collection, right? That may not ever get played. And I think I think for the completionists, this is kind of cool. This is nice. But for me personally, I mean, I don't think that's really solving a lot of the issue of, this is kind of just like an unnecessary, solution that really wasn't. At least I don't think it was a problem that very many people were experiencing. Right. The next thing that they talk about was the inefficiency of building decks quickly, and this also goes and kind of speaks to the people who like to play a lot of decks and don't have the big collection. So what they're going to be introducing is a wild card bundle. They're going to be introducing direct to purchase wild cards. Now only rare and mythic wild cards, and it's a bundle. Let that sink in for a second. Other card games, and we've talked about this in various articles, that, like, for example, I'm going to just say with Legends of Runeterra, has direct to purchase wild cards across all rarities, and you can buy individual wild cards. So if I come back to the game after 6 months of not playing and there's 3 sets that have come out, I now can go just purchase the wild cards I need to create the cards that I need for the deck that I want to play. Plain and simple, not super expensive. I don't think to really to get to that point. And that's great. But the bundle is 12 rares and 4 mythic wild cards in one bundle. They didn't say specifically as to how many times you could purchase said bundles. In theory, I'm assuming that you could purchase this bundle over and over and over and over and over and over and over again if you really wanted to. But here's the problem. It's $50. Yeah, 50 USD, real money transaction only. So RMT only, so you buy it directly with money instead of purchasing gems and then buying the bundle. You just buy the bundle. And the reason that they determined that $50 was the price point for this was that if you were to spend $50 in packs and cracked all those packs, you would get, on average, a little bit less than a little bit less rare wild cards and mythic wild cards than you would by just buying this bundle. This is I think that this is a direct purchase wild cards was something that I think would be a great thing for the game. Don't get me wrong. I think that the idea is good. How they're implementing it, I don't think is exactly the best way to go about it. While yes, you're getting the rares and the mythics, you're getting maybe a little bit more, a few more rares, a few more mythics, or a mythic or two here, more there. By buying this bundle, you do lose out on all of the commons and uncommons that you would get from opening the packs. And I don't know. I personally would love to have seen them implement something more, again, direct individual card, wild card purchase for all rarities, common, uncommon, rare, and mythic, so that there is, no limitation to the amount of things that amount of them that people can buy. And ultimately, when you present a large number to a community and you kind of try to bundle a bunch of stuff together, it's not going to necessarily go over very well. People like smaller numbers and having more choice. And ultimately, if you were to implement individual wild card purchases, people need to buy a lot of rares and a lot of mythics to compete to make top tier decks, right? So, you're going to still make a ton of cash off of the back of that, right? Imagine some decks are going to have between the lands and the cards themselves, the individual non-land cards, probably anywhere with 20, 25 rares and, a handful of mythics, some commons, uncommons here and there, but majority of them being rares and mythics. And I think that if they did individual purchases, there's just more potential for repetition, right? It's getting closer to mimicking paper in that you can directly purchase a specific card, one individual card. I could go and buy a singular rare wild card if I only needed one rare wild card. I don't have to go and buy 6 packs to try to get that rare wild card off the wheel or this whole big bundle thing, right? And then I just get more than what I need. It also opens up the possibility for more players to be able to actually purchase the cards that they need, because maybe somebody doesn't have $50 to drop on a whole set of, rare, the wild cards that they need on this bundle, but they only need maybe one rare and one mythic. And now, okay, instead of spending $50, they're spending $750 on it. And that's something that's a bit more easy and viable for somebody to do. Right. So now you don't marginalize that individual, and you can get that individual's money, right? You make that money from that person. That person bought something they would not have normally have bought. So again, I think just it's a good idea. Implementation needs a little bit of work, and this is going to be some feedback that definitely we'll have to see. The Wizards going to have data on how many people are purchasing this thing. So yeah, we'll see on how that goes. For the medium and the long term kind of solutions that they have, there are now. This is where things kind of get a bit better. The news gets a little bit more interesting. Now, they addressed the limited is the best way to play and build a collection sort of deal. So, what they're going to be doing is that they're going to be reworking rewards for constructed events. So, the standard Alchemy historic events and others. And that is going to have increased rewards so that it feels a bit better. The path to getting packs and numbers of cards and wild cards just feels much better to compete in those events if you're trying to build a collection, right? So that's nice. The other thing that they talked about was they want to try and eliminate feels bad's moments, right? Where they want to eliminate feels bad's moments by not having a dust system where you dust a whole set of cards and then 6 months later those cards are viable and now you have to recraft them. That's kind of feels bad. I get that. I've dusted my Hearthstone collection more times than I care to admit, so I totally understand where they're coming from there. But on the other side of the coin, when you don't have the ability to get rid of cards that are not good, that it feels bad having to try to commit to using your very precious wild cards on cards that you're not 100% sure on. So what they are looking to implement at some point here in the future, again, this is mid to long term, so this could be a year down the line or what have you. I might guess hopefully is going to be sooner rather than later. But it's the ability to test cards and decks out before you commit to your wild cards to them. Sounds really cool. How they're going to implement it, they're not 100% sure. Whether that's, you put a deck together and it has cards you don't own in the deck. You can have there's like a try it now button where you can maybe go on the unranked ladder or play against Sparky the bot or something, or play against a friend and just test the cards out before you actually go and commit to spending wild cards on these cards. I think that's a fantastic idea because when new sets come out and new metas come around, you're going to want to know what the best cards are for various decks, and you're never going to know unless you play them. And having the ability to playtest them before you commit your very precious resource to those cards feels good. Especially, too, if you're somebody who's just trying to dive into a new format. Your example, a new player only really maybe plays some standard here and there, and you want to get into historic, which has a much larger card pool. Well, hey, you can go online, check out a deck that you like, throw it into Arena, and now you get to actually test it out and see, hey, is this a deck that is right for me? And before you start committing wildcards to build that deck, well, hey, now you get the opportunity to try it out. I think this is fantastic. This is a big win, a big W, and I think that this honestly should be a big priority. This should be a priority that Wizards should be working on to get this in the game, get it in yesterday, because this is awesome. Okay. Next up here, Alchemy stuff. They did talk a bit about Alchemy and how some of the concerns from the community were that Alchemy was very rare dense, and the distribution of these cards really isn't great, considering you have to either spend wild cards to create all these rares, you have to buy packs. And so what they had said was that Alchemy Boosters were initially the distribution method that they came up with when they decided to go with Alchemy, and they were going to implement it into the game. Rather than doing something like an anthology where, for anybody who doesn't know, the historic anthologies, which is a bundle, you bought it and you got all the cards in that set. Small set, 20 cards maybe max, but you got all of them, right? You have 4 ofs and you're set. Cool. So they decided to go with boosters, but they did say that this method is not set in stone. They are going to be looking to potentially change up how or add additional distribution methods for these alchemy cards, because they understand that this is something that is not necessarily easy, right? It's a contentious topic. It is something where wild cards need to be spent for people who want to play alchemy. It's a bit hard. Additionally, as far as like draft and sealed events for alchemy goes, I've seen some people say that they wish that Alchemy was draftable. I can understand that. But what they did say was that from a draft perspective and a format perspective, they want to keep limited formats identical to tabletop. They want to keep them true to tabletop form so that it's not confusing to anybody who's going into a draft. They aren't ambushed by random alchemy cards in their packs, or they're not ambushed by random alchemy packs in their draft. So it could be an option, like a limited time mode option in the future that they did say that, but don't expect it to come as a regular thing. So there's that. Next thing here. So they acknowledged that historic was kind of the barrier to entry to historic is high, which I agree. It is a very high barrier to entry, and they understand that there is work to be done on that front. And I think these next 2 points are kind of related. Another big topic is why Alchemy was chosen instead of Pioneer. And so what they said was when Alchemy was being conceived and was kind of being put together, historic was, so I should say when Alchemy was being, probably when it was being put together, they had announced Pioneer Masters, which was supposed to be a set to start to backfill cards that were illegal in Pioneer to Arena so that eventually they could get Pioneer. Cool. Then that got scrapped. Then we got Alchemy. People got mad and wondering why. So now they said when Alchemy was being designed, that historic was actually fulfilling a lot of what Pioneer, what they wanted Pioneer to be, right? Which was a non-rotating format that's popular, that does more outside of, the standard environment. It was doing that for a long time, and that was great. But when they introduced digital-only cards with Jumpstart Historic Horizons, and then subsequently all the Alchemy cards, historic stopped being that true-to-paper, non-rotating format, and it is now a live format. And Alchemy kind of came in as this format that for standard players who want a more regular change, and now historic is for these players who don't like standard but maybe want a little bit more frequent change and balance and fluidity to that format, which kind of left an open hole of a true to paper non-rotating format to be added to Arena to kind of complement and hit a lot of different players. So that being said, they did state that this non-rotating print, true to paper format is coming soon, relatively soon. They said within the next month or two, which is very exciting. If you guys have seen any of the articles that we put out on this over the past month-ish or so, and if you guys may have even seen on Arena, there have been midweek Magic events that are kind of like flashback sort of a style events, where basically the first one was every card from Ixalan forward, standard print, no rebalance, no remastered sets, no supplemental products, just what was printed in standard, Ixalan forward. That's your format. Then we have one coming up this month, I believe next week. That is anything on Arena that was printed in standard. So the print version, the paper version of the card, anything from that was on Arena that is between Return to Ravnica onwards. So that's the scope of Pioneer. RTR forward, that's the legality of Pioneer. Now, but that's only cards that are on Arena. So now we're talking about adding in cards that were in that legality spectrum that are from Jumpstart Historic Horizons, Historic Anthologies, the remastered sets, so Kaladesh and Amonkhet remastered, all of that. That's all included. Cool. That's a very next logical step to bringing Pioneer to Arena. And they actually said that this non-rotating print format, whatever they're going to end up being, is going to be that bridge. It's going to be the bridge to Pioneer. So Pioneer is going to be coming. They're going to work to get there through this new format. And more than likely, I anticipate that it's going to be exactly what this format that's coming up in next week in the midweek Magic. So RTR forward, anything on Arena, standard print, what was printed in standard. That's going to be the format. and then maybe they'll like sprinkle in like an anthology drop or something that's going to have a few, a handful of cards to go into this format, and they just slowly start to add more and more and more cards to this until it's Pioneer, right? So that's cool. That's very exciting. That's a big W, and I think that is also something that should be a big priority. Get that in the game because players want it, right? Plain and simple. So very cool. The last thing that they did talk about was, and this is kind of bleeding into the Q&A a little bit, but it's something that I think is pretty relevant, and this was an announcement. So they are adding a feature to set favorite land, which is very cool. So you can set your favorite basic in your collection, and hey, great, now that's your basic. Now, what they did also say was that when they developed the tech to set your favorite basic land, it is tech that is very useful in helping solve for the reprint issue. So there's the issue being that if you have, say, Fabled Passage was printed in Throne of Eldraine, and then it's reprinted again in M20 or in M20, and now you have 8 copies of a Fabled Passage, and you only really need 4, and they're the same art. It's just a different set symbol. That doesn't feel great. So this tech is going to help to solve for that issue kind of going forward, which is very cool. Would love to see something done for kind of like back retrofit all of the cards that kind of fit this mold. Woe Strider, Fabled Passage, the temples, all kind of fit this category of cards. So would love to see something done to backfill that, but still very cool nonetheless. Getting into the Q&A section, I'm just going to read through kind of each of these questions and kind of give the short answer of what each of these were. And then, like I said, if you want more explanation on any given one of these questions, definitely go back, check out the stream from the day, watch through it all. It is good information. Try to ignore Twitch chat. And yeah, so let's get into the Q&A that all of the Twitch chat had for Blake and Chris. So the price of the wildcard bundle, again, like I said, determined by roughly getting about the same, maybe a little bit better numbers of wildcards than if you were to purchase that amount of packs. Wildcard conversion was something that came up, and that's something that we've kind of also talked about, of trading up or trading down wildcards to get, trading up commons or uncommons to get rares or mythics. And they basically, what they said was that excess of wildcard, they basically didn't want anybody to feel like they could never craft the deck because they didn't have common or uncommon wildcards, which I can sort of understand, but at the end of the day, nah. If you kind of go back and forth, right, if you can trade back up and down the spectrum, then that's never an issue. But they did say that it would take a lot of tech to make this happen. They would have to change kind of distribution rates of wildcards and things of that nature. So not on the table as a consideration, but potentially an idea that they may explore sometime down the line if things really just aren't working. The Mythic packs have duplicate protection, which is good. There was also a thought, and this is something that somebody suggested, that Mythic packs maybe would be cool if they could replace the Mythic ICRs on the Mastery passes. Very cool idea. If you think that's a cool idea, definitely let Wizards know, but let us know in the comments. Next thing, the economy. The next question was, the economy is hard on new players. Is there any thoughts on incentives for not winning, right? So for newer players, maybe hard to win games if you're playing against more experienced players. So giving players incentive, even if they happen to lose, giving some kind of a reward. And they did say that this was something that they maybe were thinking about. Definitely a down the road discussion for the actual system that would go in place. But the way that they were thinking about it was that think of it like quests, right? You have a quest that says cast this type of card, cast X number of planeswalkers, deal X number of damage to your opponent. And then you would get some kind of benefit for completing that, even if you lost. Kind of similar to actually how the daily quest system sort of works now. But again, I think this be primarily geared towards newer players. There might be some kind of flag for how these quests are available to you. So, but that is something that they're talking about. So very cool. Kind of nice for free-to-play or newer players. Is there any reimbursements coming for Nerf cards in Historic? They did say not at this time, and they've said that before. But that could change again. This is something that they've stated in previous streams that if a card is hit and is nerfed, it's primarily balanced for alchemy. If it happens to have impact in historic, even though it's going to change the card in historic, but if it happens to impact historic, that's just a side effect. But when the card rotates out of alchemy, there's a very high chance that those cards get reverted back to their paper printings. So they're not going to do any reimbursements right now, but again, that could very well change. Next question here was actually very exciting. With the constructed events getting reworked rewards, will this affect ranked play, or will this affect ranking or organized play opportunities? And they said yes, but they were not ready to have details to give us at that time. Next month, potentially. So we do know for the fact that in 2 weeks, the premiere play for tabletop stream, that discussion with Huey Jensen, is going to be happening. They did say that there's going to be a digital organized play segment stream next month sometime. Possibly that is going to talk more about that. So that's cool, knowing that actually the events happening on Arena aren't just dead ends. There's actually some reason to play these events. So that's very cool. They talked about, the question here was try before you buy. So doing the testing thing. Any plans to have deck sharing? Plans, it's being talked about, but the question about when they can fit it in, it's probably a pretty sizable undertaking. So when they can fit it in is kind of up in the air. They don't have anything specific on that. Are there more historic anthologies coming? Yes, plain and simple. Is there a code for free alchemy packs? There is a code for free alchemy packs. I believe the code that I caught in the chat was Play Neo Alchemy. Is your code to get free packs there. Will the acquisition rates of wildcards change, or is that open to change? They said it is open to change, but is it likely to change? No. Next question was, rare lands take up a lot of wildcards. Was there any thoughts about giving players more lands, to kind of offset the need to craft all of these different dual lands and rare lands? And they said that they do kind of update like the welcome decks that have some of the lands in there, but they could explore potentially doing it more frequently, just to kind of alleviate some of that pressure, which I think would be pretty welcome. I hate having to spend wildcards on lands. Will ICRs gain dupe protection overall? Maybe, but there's technical limitations. May or may not be relevant to you. Are there more remastered draft sets coming? So remastered draft sets being Kaladesh Remastered, Amonkhet Remastered. Are there more of those coming? They said that there's possibly more coming, but there's none currently slated on the radar, which means that Shadows over Innistrad Remastered, not going to be happening anytime soon. More than likely, though, my guess is that it's going to be cards put into anthologies that are going to be injected into Pioneer, because working backwards, we're still working in the legality of Pioneer for the remastered sets. So that's my guess, is that they're going to inject these cards rather than doing full remastered sets. They're going to inject cards through this new format that's going to be sort of like pseudo Pioneer. Vault reward improvements. Are there going to be changes to the vault rewards at all? And they said no, there's not going to be any improvements to the rewards, but frankly, they had plans initially to remove the vault when they introduced duplicate protection, the new duplicate protection system. And they didn't. They just never removed it. And so they're basically leaving the vault in there as basically hey, here's a nice little bonus when you get it. So they're not going to be touching it. They're just going to leave it in the game. Next interesting question here. Is there a chance at wildcard conversion to other currencies to do drafts, for example? They said no. It's a kind of an interesting idea, and this kind of plays into the next question. Limited players who go on Arena to only play limited often have times a lot of wildcards and a lot of packs that they don't open. The reward structure for them is not very fulfilling. But if they're literally just on there to just play limited and that's it. So is there any discussion about making rewards more viable, more fulfilling, more feels good for people who just play limited? I know that there's a lot of people who just play limited. And they said there's nothing specific at this time, but it's worth talking about. It is, they understand that that is a type of player that exists, who play Arena, and they definitely want to have that discussion. They want to talk about that. So very cool there. They also, another question was, why are there no pack codes for packs on Arena in physical packs of Magic cards? And I think the only reasonable part of the answer that they gave is that there's reward. They want to reward experiences rather than just rewarding the consumption of raw product. I can understand that. You get a code in your pre-release kits. So when you actually go to a pre-release, you'll get a code. Very cool. But I think that a lot of the alleviation that people may, like something that could alleviate some of these issues, is actually having these little cards, these little, code cards in packs of Magic cards that you can redeem on Arena. Now, they said that the subset of people that play Magic is on paper is a lot larger than the people who play Magic on Arena, and so they didn't know that these cards, these code cards, are going to be useful to the paper players. I think that that's just a fairly nonsensical answer. Realistically, the tip cards are the marketing promotional cards are nonsensical cards. They are useless. I think to 99.9% of Magic players who crack open a booster pack, those are useless. They're maybe used for tokens during a draft, and that's it. Completely worthless. Replace those with a card code pack to get a pack in Arena. Worst case scenario, they're not used. Best case scenario, they're used. Either way, players who would use them are happy, and players who don't need them or who aren't using them are going to throw them away anyways because they're just going to throw away the tip cards. So what? Lastly here, and the last kind of really interesting question that was given was, are bans in Historic gone for good with the fact that they are a live format and you can rebalance cards? And are there plans to improve cards that are only legal in Historic? So the answer that they gave was likely that there's still going to be cards that are banned in Historic. There are cards that are just their philosophy is that they will always try to rebalance a card that is rebalanceable. Ones that they can rebalance, they will try to, if there are issues, right? But there are cards that just can't be rebalanced. There are cards that are either that have been iterated on already just in paper. For example, the example they gave was Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt has been rebalanced over and over and over again with all the various 2 and 3 mana variants of Lightning Bolt. So it wouldn't make sense to rebalance Lightning Bolt. But then there are also cards that are just so iconic that if you rebalance the card, it's not the card anymore, right? So again, Lightning Bolt being that example. There are opportunities to do rebalances for cards that are only legal in Historic, but they're also still going to be bans. So don't anticipate those are going away. You're still going to get those bans. Those are still going to happen when warranted, but they are going to try to rebalance cards where first and foremost, right? Now they did say that when they say Historic only legal cards, we're talking about cards that came in Historic anthologies, cards that came in the remastered sets, cards that came in Jumpstart Historic Horizons and the original Jumpstart. All of those are only legal in Historic, and so it's very possible that those could be rebalanced. And they did say that when this new true to paper non-rotating format comes to Arena, that you may see more of these cards that are only legal in Historic actually see some balance passes at them for Historic specifically. So that's it. There was a lot that went on in that stream. I was kind of shocked myself to kind of hear everything. Again, I urge you to please, if there's anything that was confusing, if you want more clarification, go back, check out that VOD from the weekly MTG today over on Twitch. It was a good watch for sure. It was a full hour of content, so go check that out as well. And yeah, drop a comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts on this are. What are your thoughts on kind of these announcements at large? Is there anything that you're kind of excited for? Are there things that just don't make sense? Put your feedback on this down below. And try to do me a favor. Keep it civil, keep it constructive, because realistically, the feedback that could be given, in these comments, Our feedback that we could that could be given to Wizards, right? They're open to having a dialogue with the community around this stuff. So let's not just dumpster Wizards for these decisions. Let's give some constructive feedback on how maybe these could be done better. Obviously, we would like to see them implemented first and see what happens. Maybe they're not as big of a deal as we think they are, but let us know what you think down below. If you liked this kind of recap, make sure you smash the like button and go ahead, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel for me as well. If you made it this far, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you guys check out mtgrocks.com for all of the fantastic articles and content we are putting up over there. And thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.